Good evening to all and welcome to the classes. Welcome to Ecology and Environment class. And I am Basavaraj. So we'll be starting from where we have left yesterday. So hope I am audible as well as visible to you all. Please confirm. Perfect. Perfect. So yesterday we were discussing about something called as ecological footprint and biocapacity. I told that these are calculated yearly basis. They are calculated yearly basis. That is 365 days if it is a non-leap year, and if it is leap year, then it is 366 days. And this ecological footprint and biocapacity is calculated by global footprint network, GFN, and both are expressed in global hectares, unit called as global hectares, right? So ecological footprint, I told that it is a demand side, and biocapacity is the supply side, right? And I told that this demand side is done by humanity, demand which is done by human beings or humanity, and the supply is done by earth, every year it is calculated. This is what we discussed yesterday. And apart from that, I told that ecological footprint is amount of productive land and water. It is the amount of productive land and water. Land and water, which is needed to develop the resources. And after developing the resources, we consume the resources. And after consuming the resources, the wastes are generated. And these wastes which are generated have to be assimilated or absorbed. And this is what referred as ecological footprint. This is what I told yesterday. Amount of productive land and water, which is needed to develop the resources, and we consume the resources like food, construction, forest areas, ponds, lakes. We consume fish, prawns, etc. from that. We consume them, and after that we release wastes. Sometimes we use the raw material of forest in industries, so greenhouse gas emission are there. Wastes are generated. Water pollution happens. So all these we refer them as the waste generated. And these wastes which are generated should be assimilated or should be absorbed. So the entire land which is required for that, we refer that as ecological footprint. And the one which is supplied by the Mother Earth, we refer that as the biocapacity. This is what we discussed yesterday, right? Now, keeping this in the mind, we'll try to understand the furthermore aspect of that. This is the definition of ecological footprint and biocapacity. Right. Now, how ecosystem services can provide inspiration? Cultural services. Cultural means we worship them. Educational aspect, medicinal aspects, knowledge-based aspects. So we refer them as cultural services. Now, understand the linkage between ecological footprint and biocapacity, which are calculated every year or they are calculated yearly basis. Now, three possibilities are there. Three possibilities. Say some 500 years back, or say 1,000 years back, where the ecological footprint, EFP, ecological footprint, and if you take biocapacity, now this is something some 500 years ago, when the population was very less, when the needs were also very limited. Human needs were limited, population was also very less. So some 500 years back, this ecological footprint, which is referred as demand, and biocapacity, which is referred as the supply side. Now, when the population size was very small, when the demands were less, this ecological footprint was very small. It was less. Demand was less. And the earth could have sufficed, earth could have supplied or sufficed the demand which has been created by the humanity. So, complete year, throughout the year, for 365 days, the earth would have supplied the resources. For 365 years, the earth would have supplied the resources because the demand was less and the supply was more. So hence, there was surplus resources. Surplus resources. Some 365 years back. And that is the reason why when the demand was less, when the supply was more, so there we could have clean air, clean water, land was very fertile, right? So pollution was less. There was no solid waste which was generated by the people because whatever waste was generated was assimilated. The demands were very, very less. So surplus production of resources was there, say some 500 years back. So at that time, humanity was having clean air, pure water, land was fertile, forests were there. That is called as surplus resources which the earth could have produced. Now, second scenarios after, say, some 200 years later, we find that the population increased more, and then we say that ecological footprint, it becomes equal to biocapacity. So remember, in the initial stage, when I talked 500 years back, so their ecological footprint was less than biocapacity. Earth could have supplied the resources continuously for 365 days. But now here, ecological footprint, when it becomes equal to biocapacity, so it means that Earth could supply the resources up to a year. That means it can supply it for 365 days or 366 days. Exact. So demand and supply are same. Demand is same as well as supply is also same. Equilibrium was there. But if you see the present scenarios, now in the present scenarios, the population has increased very high. And our needs have converted into greeds. I'm repeating, our needs have converted into greeds. We want more land for our survival. We need more timbers for our luxuries. We need more amount of economic aspect, industrialization, unplanned urbanization, rapid industrialization. So what we are doing, we are over-exploiting the resources. So the demands have increased very, very high. So at present, we say ecological footprint has increased very high. So demand has increased. Demand has increased. And the biocapacity, the earth which could have renewed the resources, remained the same. The biocapacity has remained the same. Biocapacity has remained the same. So hence we say demand is more and the supply is very, very less. Supply is very, very less. So here we find a deficit type of resources. So this created deficit of resources. So in this case, Earth is unable to fulfill the need for 365 days. So here, Earth is unable to supply the resources for 365 days. Unable to supply or renew resources. Renew resources for 365 days or 366 days. It cannot supply. So maybe it can supply the resources. Maybe it can supply the resources. It can supply, say, for 200 days or 100 days. It can renew that only up to 200 days or 100 days. And what after that? What after that? After 200 days or 100 days, when the Earth's capacity is not there, Earth is unable to supply. So what we do? We use more chemical fertilizers to grow more food. We use more amount of timbers, and that leads to deforestation. We release large amount of greenhouse gases. We run industries for a longer period of time. So that creates overexploitation of the resources. When the demand is more, when the supply is less, overproduction is seen in the industry. So here, overexploitation of resources. So this leads to overexploitation of resources. Overexploitation of resources. And this overexploitation of resources makes the ecosystem to degrade. This makes the ecosystem to degrade. And hence, all the ecosystems on the earth, they are degraded because of higher ecological footprint. If you take an example of Bangalore, the ecological footprints of the Bangalores have increased to so high that Bangalore is unable to provide the water requirement. Now the Bangalore is also having a major problem with global warming. It is also experiencing the climate change issue. You forget about Bangalore, any city for that matter, any area for that matter, because of ecological footprint which is there. We find that that particular area which was very safe, now we find it is having the problem of degradation. Solid waste has been thrown on the roads. There is no land where we can dispose the solid waste. We don't have much clean air. All the rivers are polluted. All the lakes are polluted. The forest areas have been removed. Deforestation has taken place. Why? Because of our needs which are converted into greeds, plus the population which has increased. So hence, at present, the ecological footprint has been increased to such a high that the earth which is supplying the resources is unable to supply the resources for complete 365 days. It is supplying for maybe 100 days or maybe 200 days. After that, the resources has to be overexploited. So hence, in this context, a concept has been introduced, which is called as the overshoot day of the earth. So what is overshoot day of an earth? If the earth supplies the resources for 365 days, then there is no problem of overshoot day. But in the present scenarios, earth is unable to supply the resources for throughout the year. So the day when the resources which can be renewed or which can be given by the earth ends up, that day is called as the earth's overshoot day. That day is referred as the earth's overshoot day. So what is overshoot day? The date when humanity has used all the ecological resources and services that the earth can renew during the year. So we refer that as overshoot day. Overshoot day. And generally this overshoot day is calculated by a formula called as biocapacity. Biocapacity divided by ecological footprint into 365 days. If it is leap year, then biocapacity into ecological footprint into 366 days. 366 days. So this is what we refer them as the Earth's overshoot day. And this has increased over a period of a time because of increasing of the population. Demands have increased. Demands have increased. Right. Now, if you take a data, for the year 2022, the Earth's overshoot day was 22nd August. After that, overexploitation of resources started. If you take the year 2023, it is again alarming. So when we say that the Earth's overshoot day has fallen to 2nd August, so it means it is 20 days earlier than the last year. So we are tremendously exploiting the Earth's resources. So on 2nd August, the Earth, which can generate the resources, has ended up. So from 2nd August, we are overexploiting the Mother Earth till December. Now, if we take the data for 2024, they have calculated that for the year 2024, the Earth's overshoot day is alarming, which says that by 25th July itself, we will end up what the Earth can generate the resources. And after 25th July, we will be overexploiting the resources. So after 25th July, we will be overexploiting the resources. And that is where we find that the land has been degraded. We don't have clean water for drinking. We don't have clean air for breathing. Air is polluted. Solid waste is thrown on the roads. There is no land where you can dispose the solid waste. The forests have been removed, so we don't have carbon sinks. Oceans are polluted. Rivers are polluted. So this is what the present condition is. We don't have sufficient amount of biodiversity because overexploitation is killing biodiversity. So due to overexploitation, loss of biodiversity is tremendous. We don't find the fish which were there in the lakes. We don't find the fruits. We don't find the amount of crops which were there. So overexploitation of resources is in turn killing the biodiversity. Is that clear? So that is what we refer that as ecological footprint and biocapacities. And this is where we say the ecological footprint is very important concern. If we take certain countries, in the context of Qatar, it ends up in February 10. So after February 10, there will be overexploitation of resources by Qatar. And if you take certain countries like Indonesia, Jamaica. So in Indonesia and Jamaica, we find that they can be seen up to December 20 or December 6. It means that up to December, it can supply the resources to those countries. And after that, there will be overexploitation. So global average overshoot day or Earth's overshoot day is very alarming aspect. So hence we find large amount of overexploitation has been seen. Is it clear? No. My question is, in the present scenarios, what are the methods which can be seen to reduce the ecological footprint? What are the methods by which you can reduce the ecological footprint? Crude oil is not considered as a biocapacity. Crude oil is the minerals which are there in the Earth's interior. Biocapacity means which is renewed. Understand this, renew. Right. So fossil fuels are non-renewable, right? And biocapacity means the food, the services what we get from the ecosystem. Is that clear? Now, answer this question. What are the methods? So everybody agrees to this point, right? That ecological footprints has to be reduced. Everybody agrees to this points, or anywhere where confrontations are there, right? So what is the way in which the ecological footprint has to be reduced? Is my question clear to you all? Everybody agrees that ecological footprint has to be reduced, right? So ecological footprint has to be reduced, right? Then what are the ways in which the ecological footprints can be reduced? What are the methods? That's how UPSC asked the question. That's how UPSC asks the questions. How to reduce ecological footprint? Fast. The first one is, yes, it is about reducing population. Family planning, we say reduction of population or population control. What are the other ways in which we can reduce them? What are the other ways where we can reduce the ecological footprint? So here we can say one is population control. Second one is make sure that organic farming is done, or sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture. Third one is that you can talk about increasing clean energies. Focus on clean energies and renewable energy. Right. Then apart from that, we should focus on solid waste management. Solid waste management. Right. Increase afforestation. Increase afforestation. That is negative feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanism. So water conservation. Perfect. Water conservation and judicious use of that. Judicious use of that. Right. So all these, and apart from this, you can talk on many points there. Right. So decrease or sustainable development. Sustainable development. So when we say clean energies, it means that we are discouraging fossil fuels. Right. So all these you have to put there. Solid waste management, decreasing population, decreasing the greeds of human beings, afforestation activities, all these are there. Then something called as regulation on usage of resources. Regulation on usage of resources. Resources. Is it clear? So this is what we talk about the perspectives, right? So when we say that reuse, recycle, so that is part of the solid waste management. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So when I take solid waste management, I'll explain that. 3 R's are there. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Recycle. Forest conservation, that is what? Afforestation aspect. So UPSC may ask a question. UPSC may ask a question on this, right? At present, we find ecological footprints are tremendously increasing. What are the methods you suggest for India or any country so that we can reduce the ecological footprint? So that we can reduce the ecological footprint, and by which the life can become feasible for survival on the earth part. Is it clear? So this is all when we talk about that. Sustainable agriculture means which is a type of agricultural activity where less harm is done, eco-friendly type of agriculture, natural farming or climate smart agriculture. All these are the terms which you have read in your geography, right? So many terms are there. where we talk about something called as zero budget natural farming. That is what we refer that as natural farming. Then climate smart agriculture, right? All these are important in the context of what we refer them as the Earth's ecological footprint, right? So please remember these things. So you have to make a diagram and then you can put them into the points. Is it clear? So this is all about how to reduce the ecological footprint. Is it clear? Now, all the ecosystems are degraded. All the ecosystems on the earth are degraded. And that is the reason why. That is the reason why the productivity has been decreased. So hence, in this context, United Nations has declared the 2021 to 2030 as the decade of ecosystem restoration. And this decade of ecosystem restoration is implemented. It is implemented by two important organizations, that is United Nations Environment Program and FAO. United Nations Environment Program and Food and Agriculture Organization. Yes, Miyawaki method is same afforestation. Miyawaki method is where you see in the urban forestry, right? You can add them. All these are very, very vital points. Miyawaki means the same urban forestry, right? So United Nations Environment Program and FAO has started this decade of ecosystem restoration because all the ecosystems are under the stress. And the major objective of this decade of ecosystem restoration is that preventing, halting, and reversing degradation. Preventing, halting, and reversing the damage which is done to the ecosystem. Reversing the damage which is done to the ecosystem. That is to bring the ecosystem from exploitation to abundance. To bring the ecosystem from exploitation to abundance or exploitation to healing. To bring the ecosystem from exploitation to healing. So that we can generate large amount of resources for our survival. This is what the decade of ecosystem restoration. You can expect question on this in your UPSC mails. Now this is a global and regional and national approaches where sharing of knowledge is important. Conservation, protection, and managing the ecosystems are very, very important, where we talk about protection, conservation, and managing of resources. Protection, conservation, and managing the ecosystem or the resources. And this is done by many ways, applying knowledge, and it is both public as well as private sectors. Public as well as private sectors who can contribute in this aspect. And if we restore the ecosystem, then possibly we can reduce the tipping points. Possibly we can reduce the tipping points where the earth is heading towards. Is it clear? So this is some rough idea about the ecosystem restoration. And you can expect question on these perspectives, right? All are linked with ecological footprint, biocapacity, and the present scenarios. So when I take biodiversity, we will discuss a bit more on this. All are interlinked, right? Now, some questions which were asked in UPSC. In the context of ecosystem productivity, understand here, in the context of ecosystem productivity, marine upwelling zones are important as they increase the marine productivity by bringing the, so here the first one is marine upwelling point that should be kept in the mind. And the second point it says is that marine productivity is increased by bringing what to the surface? Right. Now, in this part, what could be the correct answer? UPSC always say appropriate answer. Appropriate answer. It will never say wrong and right. It will say select the appropriate answer. So it means that there may be possibility that the statements may not be wrong, but they may not be appropriate. They may not be wrong, but they may not be appropriate. So appropriate statements are required here. Now here, when we talk about this, so decomposers of organisms to the surfaces, it does not have to do anything with that, because it does not talk about any type of the perspectives, right? So this may not be the ideal answer. Then nutrients to the surfaces. So when we talk about upwelling, so if you take an example of Peru current, so Peru current is an upwelling in Pacific Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean. So wherever the Peru current upwelling is there, it brings the nutrients to the surfaces, right? So upwelling brings the nutrients to the surfaces, and the fish reaches to eat the nutrients, right? So take this example with Peru current. Then bottom dwelling organisms to the surfaces. So we have nothing to do with the bottom dwelling surface organism to the surfaces. We are not concerned about that. The concern is marine upwelling and its productivity. So hence it is only 3. Sorry, it is only 2. Apologies for that. Only 2. So this statement is also wrong. The statement is also wrong. Is it clear? So it is only 2. So bottom dwelling organisms can reach to the surface. That is also correct statement, but it is not appropriate for productivity. It is not appropriate to the productivity. Is it clear? So hence the statement is correct, this is wrong, and this is wrong. So that's why UPSC questions are play of words. You have to read the question correctly, understand the question correctly, decode the question, then only you can write appropriate. In Group C exams, you don't find confusion. They will be right and wrong answers. But here you will find the questions with the statements which are synced with each other. And within that, you have to pick which is appropriate. Is that clear? Now, the next one is, which one of the following items describes not only the physical space occupied by organism, but also functional role in the community? Some questions will be very, very simple like this. Very simple like this. It is definition, and you don't have to depend more on that. So read the question and mark it very correctly. So the moment when you talk about the physical space and its activity, then we say that it is called as the ecological niche. We refer that as ecological niche, right? So regarding the poll, next time I'll be doing that as a poll. Next time I'll be surely take that as a poll, right? Next, consider the following: bats, bears, rodents. The phenomenon of hibernation can be observed in which of these? Now, such questions can be asked in the examination, which can be bit confusing or which needs more amount of the facts. Now, in this case, bats also perform hibernation, bears also perform hibernation, and rodents also perform hibernation. So all the 3 are here. All the 3 are here. Now, sometimes current affairs related questions can be asked, like, why is there a concern of large amount of microbeads that were released in the environment? Now, what are these microbeads? And this was in the current affairs. Even today it is concern issue. Even today it is concern issue. So what are microbeads? Microbeads are nanoplastic particles. They are plastic particles, nanos, very small types of plastic particles, and these are used in cosmetics. Now, when they enter into the aquatic ecosystem, the fish and marine organism, they consume that. The marine organism, they consume that. And as they are plastic, marine organism cannot digest them. So the fish or marine organisms, they can't digest them. They can't digest them. So what will happen to that? Their stomach will be filled with these types of plastic elements, and it can't take the natural food, and it can't excrete also, and it can't digest that also. So the fish and marine organisms will die because of the lack of food or lack of hunger, right? Lack of hunger or starvation. So that is where the first aspect is seen. They are considerably harmful for marine ecosystems, and this will make the marine organism to die of hunger. Yes, it is where we say a aspect of question of bioaccumulation. Right. Now next, it is bioaccumulation, not biomagnification. Right. Then, which one of the following is the best description of the term ecosystem? First, best description of the term ecosystem. So here, the statements are not wrong. You have to use your basic common sense and use appropriate, which describes that. A community of organisms interacting with one another, that is also true. That part of earth which is inhabited by living organism, that is also true. The flora and fauna of geographical area, that is also true. But the best explanation is when we take the part as a community of living organism in their physical space. So A is also not wrong, B is also not wrong, D is also not wrong, but the appropriate will be the C. So hence, read the statement carefully. So while answering, you should be calm and composed. If you are having the proper connection with your brain, mind, thought, and your hand, then you can write or make the correct decision. So here you should be always calm and composed mind. By that, you can decode the question and answer it very correctly. So if you are writing or if you are taking decision in hurry-burry, every time you will be having the losses. So you should be composed one, right? Then, in grasslands, trees do not replace. In grasslands, trees do not replace as a part of ecological successions, right? So in the grasslands, it is something like this. If you see an ecological succession, grasslands cannot be replaced by the trees. Why? So when you talk about that, always remember, grasslands cannot be replaced by trees in general. Why? Because in the grasslands, there will always be a forest fires. In the grasslands will be always associated with fires. And in the grasslands, there will be shortage of water. Right? And when you talk about the trees, if continuously forest fires are there, then if the trees are not resistant to the fire, then they can't grow. This is what happening in the Amazon forest, and there will be a shortage of water, which will not make the trees to grow and make productivity. So hence the answer will be the C, water limit and the fire. Perfect. Water limit and fire. Right. Now these are the questions you practice after the class. Right. So that completes the first aspect, that is the concept of ecology, where we made an effort in understanding certain terminologies and certain definitions. Right. Now we moved on to something called as biodiversity. So biodiversity is also referred as a short form of biological diversity. Right. It is a short form of biological diversity. Now, this biological diversity is a work of millions of years of evolution. It is the work, or it is a process of millions of years of evolution. Right. So work process of millions of years. Right. Millions of years where the organisms have adapted and they survived. Now, in a very simple term, when the earth was there, so what is the age of earth? What is the age of the earth? Generally, when we say age of an earth, you should be very active in your answering. So we say it is around 4.5 billion years. So you should be very clear with your geography. So age of an earth, we say it is 4.5 billion years. 4.5 billion. Million is different, billion is different, right? So we say it is 4.5 billion years, right? After that, the earth becomes solidified, and the first organism, the first life on the earth is of bacteria. Bacteria. Many theories are there. I'm not discussing the theories. The first life was the bacteria. And even today, we find the fossils of bacteria are there. Even today, we find the fossils of bacteria are there. And these fossils of the bacteria, more specifically, cyanobacteria, fossils of cyanobacteria are the one which are giving evidences of the life which started on the earth. And these fossils of cyanobacteria, which are billions of years old, we can find them even in India, like Madhya Pradesh, the coastal areas, Australia, many parts of the earth. We find the fossils of the cyanobacteria. And these fossils are referred as stromatolites. Stromatolites. Please remember these terms. Stromatolites. After that, slowly we find the organisms evolved, and they become more complex life. Then complex life was started. Right. So which created large amount of flora and fauna on the earth surface, which created large amount of flora. Flora means plants and animals. That is fauna on the earth surface. Right. So this is some rough idea that how the earth was formed. You have studied this in the theories in geography, and I have given you a squeeze of that the first fossils were there. We refer them as stromatolites. And then after that, the conditions become favorable. And at present, we find the complex organisms are there on the earth. Complex flora and fauna are there on the earth. And even today also, evolution is there. Even today, we find the evolution is seen. Evolution is seen here. Even today also, the plants and animals are evolving so that they can adapt. And survive. Even today we find it is their mechanism which takes millions of years to them. So this is how the biodiversity seen on the earth, which developed on the earth, and this was supported, and this biodiversity was spread by geographical factors and geological factors. So I'll discuss what is geographical factors in the later slide, but remember, it was the geographical factors which made the biodiversity to spread. Geological factor which make the biodiversity to spread on the earth. Is it clear? Now we'll discuss what is that. But before moving down to that, how do you define a biodiversity? Now here, when we say definition of biodiversity, it is very simple to understand. Now if you visit in a hotel, in the hotel, when you order for the dosas, so then he say we have different types of dosas. So for different type of dosas, what is the word he uses? So when we say paneer dosa, egg dosa, masala dosa, plain dosa, or say sometimes something, so what is the word which is used for different types of dosas? Varieties, right? So he says that varieties. So hence in biodiversities we say it is variety of species. variety of species. It means if you take a dog as a species, different breeds of dogs are referred as varieties. Breeds of dogs are referred as varieties. Now, along with that, in the hotel you will also find dosa. Along with that, puri and other items are there. So when we talk about other items, then we say, or he says, we have variations also. We say variations also. Variations also. Variations means different types of food products. So in the single species, we find varieties. Variations, like here, variations means it can be idli, it can be dosa, it can be puri or something. But here, variations means it can be dog species, elephant species, tiger species, rat species, etc. So variations in the community. Variations in the community. Right. Apart from that, the habitats where they stay, their dwelling places, habitats where they stay, habitat or dwelling places. So all these, when you combine, we refer that as biodiversity. So it is variety within the species and variation among the species. Variety within the species, variation among the species and their habitats. We refer that as biodiversity. So please remember this. So it is a very simple word. It talks about variety within the same species and variation among the species. Variation among the species. That is called as community. Community. Variety in the same species. Variety will be in the same species. That is different breeds of dog. Elephants, rats, cats, everything when you take, we refer that as variation. Variation. And also their ecosystem complexes, that is their dwelling places, that is their habitats. Some of the species, they stay in the deserts. Some of the species, they stay in the grasslands. Some of the species, they stay in the aquatic ecosystems. Some of them stay in the tundra, that is ice caps. So we refer them as variety and variability among all the living organisms and their complexes. We refer this as biodiversity. Biodiversity. Is it clear? Now, next perspective is that when you talk about this biodiversity, we come across a term which is very important in the context of the flow. We come across a term called as Cambrian explosion, a term which can be asked in the prelims, not for the mains, in the prelims. Cambrian explosion. This Cambrian explosion refers to a Cambrian period of the Earth. Cambrian period of the Earth. Now, in geography, you are studied about Earth's chronostratigraphic chart. I'm repeating. In geography, you are studied about the Earth's chronology, or we refer that as chronostratigraphic charts. That is from 4.5 billion years to till today. We define them into ages, periods, epochs, etc. Right. So in that, Cambrian period is something which is important for biodiversity. I'm repeating. In the Earth's chronostratigraphic chart, Earth's chronology, we classify the entire Earth's eons into epochs. Then epochs are subdivided into periods, and periods into what we refer them as the ages. This is what you are studied in your geography. Now here, Cambrian period is associated with that format itself. So this Cambrian period, it is somewhere around 540 million years ago. Right? So some 540 million years ago, maybe due to the Earth's change, maybe due to the geological changes, geological factor, or maybe due to large amount of the gases which were released from the Earth's interior. The gases which were released from the Earth's interior might have changed the climatic conditions, might have changed the climatic conditions, or environmental factors, environmental factors. And this changed conditions, the composition which hasn't changed, the composition which has changed, was responsible for sudden explosion of the animals, was responsible for sudden evolution of animals, explosion of animal, growth of animals, sudden growth of animals, of all the complex animal kingdom, all the animal kingdom in around 15 to 20 million years, in a span of 15 to 20 million years. Now compared to the Earth's age, so 4.5 million years, 4.5 billion years is very large, million years is very small. So hence, in this small period of 15 to 20 million years, entire animal kingdom got evolved. And we refer this as the Cambrian explosion. And we refer this as Cambrian explosion. That is, initially there were only prokaryotes without well-defined nucleus. After that, slowly eukaryotes were there. Eukaryotes means well-defined nucleus was there during the Precambrian period. After that, suddenly in the span of 15 to 20 million years, all the metazoans got evolved. They are hemichordata, echinoderms, chordatas, mollusks, worms, arthropods, all these. So complex animal species get evolved in a span of around 15 to 20 million years. And this episode in the Earth's geological history, we refer that as Cambrian explosion. Cambrian explosion, sudden formation of all the animal kingdoms on the Earth's surface. So the definition of this is sudden appearance of all the complex animal species somewhere in the 541 million years. And this is in the span of around 15 to 20 million years. And this created all the model or modern animal phyla. And we refer that as the Cambrian explosion. Cambrian explosion. Is it clear? Okay. Now, this is some rough idea about the Cambrian explosion. Now, next is pattern of biodiversity. Where do you find the biodiversity as maximum? Now, remember law of tolerance. Remember the services which are maximum. If you take the Earth, where do you find sunlight maximum? Where do you find availability of resources maximum? Where do you find the temperature is ideal? If you take latitudinal wise and altitudinal wise. So when you talk about pattern of biodiversity, we always take into two ways, that is latitude wise and altitude wise. It is along with the latitude, and second one is along with the altitude. So altitude means with height, right? So generally when we talk about that, so we find the sunlight, the conditions are more favorable at the equators, and they are very less towards the poles, where the temperature is less, sunlight also doesn't reaches. So hence we say that the maximum biodiversity will be near the equator, and it decreases towards the poles. So hence the latitudinal distribution of biodiversity is, it is maximum at equator. It is maximum at equator and decreases towards the poles. Decreases towards the poles. It is always maximum in the tropical areas. and it decreases as we move on towards the poles. As we move on towards the poles, right? Now here you should be very careful. So torrid zone is something which is different from the terminologies. You should be very careful in defining the terms. The geographical area between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, we refer that as tropical area. Tropical area. And the same area, if you calculate on the basis of temperature, we refer that as torrid zone. So the Earth can be classified into different ways. If you are classifying the Earth based on temperature, then we say this is torrid zone, then this is temperate zone, and then frigid zone. This is based on temperature. That is based on temperature, right? And then second one is when you classify the Earth based on the geographical perspective, based on latitudinal perspectives, then we say that this is 0 degree and this is 90-degree latitude. Now 0 and 90 degrees. 0 means lower values. So hence we refer them as lower latitudes. Lower latitudes. And 90 means 80, 90, etc. So they are referred as higher latitudes. So these are referred as higher latitudes. Higher latitudes. So hence, in the context of geography, generally we say 0 degrees to 30 degrees is referred as lower latitudes. Lower latitudes. 30 to 60 degree latitudes, we refer them as mid latitudes. Mid latitudes. And 60 degrees to 90 degrees, we refer them as higher latitudes. So please remember this. Lower latitude, mid latitude, and higher latitudes. So mid latitudes are also referred as extratropical areas. Mid latitudes are also referred as extratropical areas. Tropical cyclone, extratropical cyclones, temperate cyclones, etc. Is it clear? So you should be very clear with your terminology. This is based on temperature. This is based on the latitudes, which is often used in the discussion. So hence, we can say that the biodiversity is maximum at lower latitude and it decreases towards higher latitude. Equator means lower latitude. And it decreases towards higher latitudes. So hence, generally we say the biodiversity is maximum in the tropical area. It is maximum in the tropical area. Right. So this is what you should remember. So hence this areas, there will be variations, but still the biodiversity is maximum in the lower latitudes and it decreases towards the higher latitudes. This is one aspect. Then second aspect is with the altitude. So if we take this as a mountains of Himalayas, so we refer them as lower altitude, and this is called as higher altitude. Now, at the height of Himalayas and at the foothills of Himalayas, so this is called as foothills or the lower region. So where do you find the biodiversity is maximum? At the higher altitudes or lower altitudes in the mountains? Where do you find the sunlight or the food is maximum? So hence we say along the altitudes, the biodiversity is maximum at lower altitudes. So among the altitudes, the biodiversity is maximum at lower altitude, and it decreases with higher altitude, Is it clear now? Lower latitude is different from lower altitude. Higher altitude is different from higher latitudes. So don't get confused with the latitude and altitude. Don't get confused. Is it clear or any doubt here? So don't confuse with the torrid and other parts. They should be very perfect in the terminologies. You should be using the words appropriately. Then only the evaluator will be emphasized to give you good amount of marks here. So torrid is a part, but the appropriate word is tropical area. Perfect. So this is something which you should understand in the context of your studies. Right. Now, next one is not that Cambrian explosion is important. That image is not important. Cambrian explosion, the term is important. The term is important. Done. Okay. Now, next is levels of biodiversity. So whenever when you talk about levels of biodiversity, generally we have three levels of biodiversities. Three levels of biodiversities. The first one is the genetic biodiversity. Genetic biodiversities. So what is genetic biodiversity? So genetic biodiversity is variation in the makeup among, or variation in the genetic makeup within individuals, that is within the same species. Variations in the genetic makeup among individuals within same species. Within the same species. So this is what you should remember. Variations in the genetic makeup among the individuals within the same species. We refer that as genetic diversity. Genetic diversity. Now this genetic diversity is very, very important. This genetic diversity helps the individual species to adapt and evolve. So this genetic diversity makes the organisms to adapt to changing environment. And this variation, genetic variation, it also makes the organism to undergo evolution. And when it makes an evolution, then it will survive. It is something where we say Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. They can survive only when they evolve and adapt to the changing environment. They evolve, they change in their structures, and they adapt. So this will make the organism, the adaptability to the changing environment. Evolution will make the organism, or it will prevent the organism from extinction. It will prevent the species or organism from extinction. If it is not, then it cannot survive. If not, then it can't survive. So we refer this as something called as the genetic variations or genetic diversity. So please remember this. Genetic diversity. Right. So sometimes when we talk about genetic diversity, if they are changing and adapting to the changing environment, they will survive. Maybe due to disease which can make them to collapse, or maybe due to the climatic change which are making the conditions more complex for their survival. If they adapt to the changing environment, if they adapt to the complexities, then they will survive from extinction. We refer that as genetic biodiversities or genetic diversity. It's a very simple to remember. Don't make in-depth analysis of that. Then the second one is species biodiversity. Genetic diversity means varieties of, so when we talk about dogs, so different breeds of dogs will be there. All will be having different characteristics. If you make same type of inbreeding within them, then there is possibility that they cannot survive. Right? So hence, generally we talk about interbreeding. Then only they can have more amount of biodiversities. Inbreeding will collapse. Interbreeding will create diversities. right? Now, in the same way, species diversities. So species diversities, when we say, it is the measures of diversity within the community, measures the diversity within the community. Within the community, right? It means that varieties of dogs, varieties of birds, varieties of snakes, varieties of different animals. So we refer that as, it is the varieties in the communities. So within the population or within the species, genetic diversity. And within the community, we refer that as species diversity. And generally, there are two indices to measure that. Two indices to measure that. No, you don't have to elaborate. Sometimes in prelims, if they ask, these indices are, one is referred as Shannon-Weiner index. Shannon-Weiner index. And the second one is Simpson index. Second one is Simpson index. So these are the two indices which measures the species diversity. So that is more than sufficient. Don't make elaboration of what is Shannon-Weiner index. So there will never be any question on that. They may ask question. Shannon-Weiner index and Simpson index is used to define species diversity. That's it. Then ecosystem diversity, the third level of biodiversity. So it is variability in the habitats within the geographical area. Variability in the habitats. Variability in the habitats in the geographical area. We refer that as ecosystem diversity. Some of them stays in the forest areas. Within the forest areas, grasslands will be there. Some of them stays at the higher altitude. Some of them stay in the lower altitude. So we refer that as the ecosystem diversity. So when we say species biodiversity as convergent evolution, yes, you can say convergent evolution, and genetic biodiversity as a part, not completely, as a part, not perfect definition. You can make them as good as, right? So divergent evolution, you can say, but it is not perfect definition. It is somewhat related to that. Perfect. So this is what we refer them as the three levels of part: genetic, species, and ecosystem diversities, right? Now next, we move on to understand something called as mega biodiverse countries. Now I'm taking only those which are very important for the exam and which can helpful for the understanding. We are making the linkages of that. Now, what are mega biodiverse countries? So mega biodiverse countries are those countries where we find large amount of species, or we say organisms, which are endemic to that area. So it means it is having large amount of endemism. Another term for endemism is native to that area. Plus that country has very rich biodiversity. So species are endemic to that region, and it is also very rich in biodiversities. Such countries, we refer them as mega biodiverse countries. Now, what should be the criteria which is given to that? There should be some criteria which defines the endemism in that areas. So World Conservation Monitoring Center, World Conservation Monitoring Center. It has set up two criteria. It has given two criteria to classify any country to be said as mega biodiverse countries. So rich in biodiversity means variety of birds are there, variety of animal species are there, varieties are tremendous in that. So we refer that as biodiversity. More amount of diversity of varieties of species are there. Right. Now what the criteria it says? The first criteria it says is that country, this is country based, not geography, it is country based. So that country should have 5,000 of the plant species which are endemic to that area. So that country should have at least 5,000 plant species. Plant species which are endemic to that area. To country. That is first criteria. 5,000 plant species of the earth. 5,000 plant species of the earth should be endemic to that country. The second criteria it says that it should have marine ecosystem within its boundaries. Marine ecosystem within its boundaries. Within its boundaries. So it means that it should have a coastal ecosystem. So it means that it should have a coastline. That country should have a coastline, or it should have a coastal area. So if any country do not have coastal area, then which type of country is referred as? If any country without the coastline, any country without the coastline, we refer that country as which type of country? Anybody who can answer that? Landlocked country. So country without the coastline, we refer them as landlocked country. So here, this country should not be landlocked. So please keep this in the mind. It should not be landlocked country. So it should have coastal area, plus it should have 500 plant species which are endemic to that region. So only these countries, we refer them as mega biodiverse countries of the world as per the World Conservation Monitoring Center. And according to the data, there are 17 countries which are classified as mega biodiverse countries of the earth. And these 17 countries are the countries which are within the tropics. Which are within the tropics. That is Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Within the tropics. Now don't confuse. Alaska, it is a part of USA. Alaska is a part of USA. Right. Now here when we talk about the countries, United States, Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, South Africa, Brazil, Democratic Republic of Congo, small coastline is there. Small coastline is there. Then Madagascar, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia. So these all are the countries which have 17, right? So 17 countries are there which are referred as mega biodiverse countries. Mega biodiverse countries of the world. And in this 17 countries, India is also there. So India is a mega biodiverse country. India is a mega biodiverse countries. Now if we take the land of these countries, so all these countries, 17 countries totally 17 countries, they cover 10% of Earth's surface. They cover 10% of Earth's surface. But they hold 70% of the terrestrial biodiversity. Within them, they have 70%. They cover 70% of terrestrial biodiversity. Terrestrial biodiversity. Right. So such rich areas are there. We refer them as mega biodiverse countries. And India is one among them. India is one among the mega biodiverse countries. So please remember this. So don't confuse this with biodiversity hotspot. That is different. This is different. So this is country wise. This is country wise. Right. So when we say Democratic Republic of Congo, so this is having a small coastline here. Small coastline, which is having an access to that region. Right. Now, Next is something called as biogeographical realms. Now here, your geography is very important. Biogeographical realms. Now understand this biogeographical realms with some perspectives. Now those who have attended geography, so for them it will be very easy. So when the earth was formed, we say it is 4.5 billion years. 4.5 billion years. After that, small life started on the earth. We refer them as bacteria. So bacteria were there. That is the life which started on the earth. And then somewhere around 540 million years ago, Cambrian explosion was there. And after the Cambrian explosion, complex life was there. Complex life was there. That is, plants and animals were there on the earth. I'm not talking about human beings. I'm not talking about human beings. Complex life and plants were there on the earth. This is called as Cambrian explosion. We refer that as Cambrian explosion. Right. Now, after this, when we take the year somewhere around 300 million years ago, 300 million years ago, right? No, 300 million years ago, what was there? A big patch of a land which was there on the earth was referred as, anybody who can answer this, some 300 million years ago, say 350. So we refer that as, rather than Pangea, any alternate word? Any alternate word rather than Pangea? We call the term as supercontinent. So don't get confused. Supercontinent. So here it was having a supercontinent. And this supercontinent is referred as Pangea. Supercontinent called as Pangea. So if this is an earth, this is an earth. And here it had a Pangea. And on this Pangea, it existed of large amount of plants and animals were there. So it was having complex flora and fauna. Complex flora and fauna was there on the Pangea. Up to this, is it clear? No. Supercontinent, and there we find large amount of flora and fauna was there. Now, here geography is there. You have studied something called as continental drift theory, and second one is plate tectonic theory. So there were problems with the continental drift theory, which were explained by the plate tectonic theory. Now, according to the theory, what it says? It says that Pangea broke away and started to drift. This is what you are studied in geography. So this Pangea, it broke away and started to drift. Drift means moving. Drift or moving. Right. Now here, this is what we see in the continental drift theory. And whatever drawbacks in the continental drift theory were there, they were corrected by plate tectonic theory. And while drifting perspective is there. So there in the plate tectonic theory, it says that the movement created three types of plate movements: convergent, divergent, and conservative. So I'm not discussing in detail about that. So the broken Pangea, that is lithosphere plates, they converged. So this drift made them to converge, and this drift also make them to diverge. Converge and diverge. Now, what was the result of convergent of the plates? When the plates were converged, what was the result of that? When the lithosphere plates converged, I'm not talking about oceanic and oceanic. It can be continent and continent, or it can be anything. So when the convergence was there, so that created mountains. Perfect. So this convergence created mountains. Right. And what is the divergence created when the divergence was there? So divergence created what we refer them as rift valleys and oceans. Up to this, is it clear? Convergence created big mountains like Himalayas. Divergence, when the North American plate and South American plate, when they moved away from European plate, they created Atlantic Ocean. Indian plate moving towards the northward created Indian Ocean. I'm repeating. Indian plate moving towards the northern side created Indian Ocean. North America and South America drifting towards the west side created the Atlantic Ocean. So they created mountains and oceans. Now these crusts, when they moved away from each, when they drifted, so please remember, along with their drift, they carried the plants and animals along with them. So these plants and animals were carried with them like a big ships. So there they carried the plants and animals along with them. They carried them. So it is something like this. So if this is an earth, now wherever these plates moved, so these plates, they carried the plants and animals along with that. They carried all the plants along with them. Is it clear? No. When they made convergent and divergent, they created physical boundaries. So these created physical boundaries. Created physical boundaries. It means that the animal species and plant species, they get separated from each other. So which created the physical boundaries, where we say the flora and fauna separated from each other, where the flora and fauna, they got separated from each other, and they made evolution uniquely. And by that, they made evolution uniquely. So they have unique evolution. And created unique species in that areas. So those species which adapted to the particular conditions, they survived. And those species, those plants which cannot adapt to the conditions, they become cease to exist. So hence we say the continental drift theory and plate tectonic theory is one of the reason for distributing the biodiversity on the earth. So hence we say a tagline, that is continental drift theory, or plate tectonic theory is one of the reason, not all, one of the reason for spreading biodiversity on the earth. So this you should keep in the mind. Sometimes in the mains they may ask the question, write a note on the continental drift theory or the plate tectonic theory, which is responsible for spreading the biodiversity on the earth. So that's where we find the biodiversity has reached to some parts of Arctic, some parts of Antarctic, in the northern side, eastern side, western side. Those all organisms, they adapted to the particular environmental conditions by developing certain factors, maybe development in the skins, their methodologies, particular traits they have acquired, and they survived. This is called as genetic diversity, which have made them to survive and evolve and sustain even today. Those which could not make the changes, they become cease to exist. And this is what the big areas were created. And we refer them as the biogeographical realms. Is it clear? So these areas, the larger areas, are referred as biogeographical realms, right? So they are Nearctic, Neotropical, Afrotropical, Palearctic, Indomalayan, Oceanian, and Antarctic biogeographical realms. Now, how do you define a biogeographical realms? It is very simple now. Keeping all these things in the mind, biogeographical realms are larger areas of land in which relatively similar organisms have evolved over a period of millions of years. Isolation. Why? Because they were separated by physical boundaries. So, which physical boundaries we are talking? Physical boundaries like mountains and physical boundaries like oceans. Oceans. And they have evolutionary history. Unique evolutionary histories. And by that, large amount of biodiversity the earth. Spread on the earth. So, this is the definition of biogeographical realms. And what is the reason for that? Continental drift theory and plate tectonic theory. This is how geography will help us to understand the spread of biodiversity on the earth. Is it clear? So please remember this flow. Please remember this flow. You have to write them in a very simple statements with the chronology. Is it clear? And this is where we say the biogeographical realms as these Nearctic, Neotropic. So if we say the plate tectonic theory, the seven major plates: North American plate, South American plate, Nearctic plate, Neotropical plate, African plate, Afrotropical plate. So here if you see the continental drift theory, so this created Himalayas, and this Himalaya separated the region of India, that is the Indian subcontinent, from the northern part. Then here we find ocean, which separated the regions, right? Physical boundaries which separated them, right? So these are referred as biogeographical realms. Now the point which you should remember is, if you take India, India is mega biodiverse country, and India shares two biogeographical realms. India shares two biogeographical realms, and these are Palearctic and Indo-Malayan. India shares two biogeographical realms, that is Palearctic, and second one is Indo-Malayan. And hence India is very rich in biodiversity. India is very rich in biodiversity. Is it clear? So this is where the concepts are also very important in the study of geography and in the study of ecology and environment, right? Now we'll move on to a term called as biomes. What are biomes? So till now we have studied about the continental drift theory and plate tectonic theory. So we know that the continental drift theory and plate tectonic theory made the distribution of flora and fauna on all the part of the earth. Now to analyze the worldwide distribution of flora and fauna, analyze the worldwide or global distribution of flora and fauna. So this you should keep in the mind. Analyze the worldwide distribution of flora and fauna. Flora and fauna means plants and animal species, because of continental drift theory and also plate tectonic theory, and explain its variation. Explain its variation. Variation of flora and fauna. Explain its variation along with latitudes. Latitude means from equator towards the poles. Latitude means horizontal, equator towards the poles. Along with altitudes. Altitude means heights. And third one is continental position. Continental position. That is, whether they are inside the continent or whether they are in coastal areas. Continental position, whether they are inside the continent or in the coastal areas. Right. So explain its variation. Entire Earth is divided into biomes. Entire Earth is divided into biomes. Now, how do you define the biomes? So biomes are larger geographical areas. Biomes are larger geographical areas. Right. So when we say larger geographical areas, you should remember that they are the areas where the plants and animals have adapted to the particular environmental conditions. So larger geographical areas with distinct plant and animals. With distinct plant and animals, flora and fauna, which have adapted, which have adapted to particular environment. Such larger areas we refer them as biomes. We refer them as biomes. Is that clear? So biomes are larger geographical areas with distinct types of plants and animal species, which have evolved and adapted to the particular environmental conditions. Such larger areas we refer them as biomes. Is it clear? Now there are different categorization of biomes are there, but in general we classify all the biomes into 6 major types. There may be subdivisions, but the 6 major types are freshwater, marine means ocean, then deserts, so it can be hot deserts or it can be cold deserts. Then forest biomes, tropical forest, temperate forests, right? So forests are there, grasslands, tropical grassland, temperate grasslands, tropical grassland, temperate grasslands, etc. Then tundra, ice cover, tundra, ice cover. Right. So this is how the entire Earth is classified into different biogeographical realms or biomes. So there may be subdivisions. But remember, these are the major biomes of the Earth. These are the major biomes of the Earth. Is that clear? So now we'll take up one by one biomes, which can be important for the prelims point of view, so that they can help you in understanding the perspectives. Now the first one is called as the forest biome. The forest biome. Now the moment when you talk about the forest biome, so this forest biome consists of different types of forest. So they can be tropical forest, they can be temperate forest, deciduous forests, etc. So within the forest biome, the first is referred as the tropical rainforest. Now the tropical rainforests are those which are found within the tropics. Within the tropics. That is Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. This is Tropic of Cancer and this is Tropic of Capricorn. And this is equator. And the forest which is near the equator, it is also referred as equatorial rainforest. Equatorial rainforest near the equator. So that is also which is seen in the tropical rainforest. Now if you see the tropical rainforest, it is found in the major continents, that is South America, where river Amazon is dominant. It is the largest tropical rainforest in the world. And then it is also found in the continent of Africa. Now which river is dominant in this part? In the Africa, which is responsible for creating tropical, right? So here we find Congo River. So area around Congo. Now you should be very careful that Congo is the only major river in the world which cuts the equator twice. This Congo is the major river on the earth, which cuts the equator twice. So it passes something like this, one time and second time. So such questions you can expect in the context of your examination, right? Congo. And then last one is Indonesia and Sumatra. Indonesia and Sumatra. That is in between Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. In between Indian and Pacific Ocean, right? Now these tropical rainforests, they are always associated with the major issues, that is deforestation. Second one is forest fires, deforestation and forest fires, which are always seen in this. And these areas are also very rich in biodiversities. They are rich in biodiversity, and hence they are the regions where many protected areas are there. Many protected areas are there, like national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. National parks, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. We refer them as the tropical rainforest. And the rainforest near the equator, 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south, we refer that as equatorial rainforest. Equatorial rainforest. Now, if you see the distribution of tropical rainforest in the context of India, so in the context of India, we find the tropical rainforest is found in the western part of Western Ghats. It is found in the western part of Western Ghats, which is windward side of the mountains. Windward side of mountain. And this is windward for southwest monsoon. Southwest monsoon. Then it is also seen in the Tamil Nadu region. That is northeast monsoon, which brings rainfall in the Tamil Nadu area, Tamil Nadu coast, due to northeast monsoon. Then it is also seen in the northeast part of India, and the coastal areas of West Bengal, etc. Right, and also small places in Andaman and Nicobar. Small places in Andaman and Nicobar. So where we find the tropical evergreen forests are there in India. It is due to the monsoon rainfall. It is due to the monsoon periodic change in the direction of the winds, which brings the rainfall here. So this is where the tropical rainforests are seen in context of India, and this is in the context of the world near the equator. Right. Now, if you see the vegetation in that areas, generally they consist of different layers. The upper layer is referred as emergent layer, the leaves one, emergent layer. Then we have canopy layer, and then underground or shrub layer, and then forest floor. It is something like this. So the trees are very densely arranged. The trees are very densely arranged, and this is called as the emergent layer. This is called as the canopy layer, and this is called as the undershrub or shrub layer. So three levels of forests are there. Three levels of forests are there. Sorry, the trees are there. Emergent layer, canopy layer, under story or shrub layer. So very difficult for sunlight to reach here. Difficult for sunlight to reach to the ground. Right. So very difficult for sunlight to reach to the ground. So when the sunlight is not reaching to the ground, what will be the organisms activities? Will they move horizontal or will they move vertical when the sunlight is not reaching to the ground? when the sunlight is not reaching to the ground, the organisms, will they be moving horizontal or will they be moving vertical? Right. So all organisms require sunlight for their survival. So when they require that, so hence they will be moving vertical. So that is the reason why in the rainforest, the ecological niche is vertical. They find the habitats upwards. So here we find their vertical niche are there. So it means they move upward. And when they move upwards, it means that most of the organisms are tree dwelling. Most of the species are tree dwelling. And these tree dwelling species, we refer them as arborals. We refer them as arborals. Arborals, like birds, monkeys, etc. Arborals. So this is some rough idea about the vegetation and their characteristics. Now, if you see that in detail, they have very heavy rainfall. Very heavy rainfalls are there throughout the year. Then no seasons at equator. No seasons, this is at equator. No seasons at equator. Then they have very high temperature, 20 to 35 degrees. Very high temperature. Then very high level of biodiversity. Very high level of biodiversity. Right. Then next one is that they have the soil which is poor from nutrients because heavy rainfall washes the nutrients. Heavy rainfall, this precipitation washes the nutrients away from that. So nutrients are washed away. Washed away. And here we find the plants and animal species, they always have interdependence. Interdependence for their survival. Interdependence for their survival. Like the liana, they climb on other trees. They are not parasitic. They climb on other and they survive. Right. So they always have interdependence. Then they have tall and thin trees. They always have tall and thin trees because of high density. Because of high densities. And they have buttress roots and epiphytes. Buttress roots, strong roots. Buttress roots, and they always have epiphytes along with them. Epiphytes with them. So these are the terms which you should remember. And the species there, they are arborals. Most of the species are arboral. That is tree dwelling species like camouflage, spider monkey, flying frog, toucan, etc. So we refer them as the rainforest vegetation as well as animal species. Is it clear? Now, among these rainforests, the first one is referred as the Amazon forest. Amazon forest. Amazon forest. And this Amazon forest is the largest tropical rainforest in the world. Not all coastal regions. So where we have some coastal areas which are always having the leeward region. So leeward regions will not be having rainfalls. Leeward regions will not be having. So you should be very clear with that part. So not all the coastline areas where the rainfall is maximum. Right? So Amazon forest. Now, if you take the Amazon forest, certain facts are there. This Amazon forest covers 40% of South America. 40% of area of South American continent. And if you take country-wise, this Amazon forest covers 60% of Brazil. 60% of Brazil. And this Amazon forest, it is spread in 9 countries: Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. It is overseas territory. So it is spread in 9 countries. It is spread in 9 countries, continent-wise, country-wise. And this Amazon is referred as lungs of planet. Lungs of planet. Why? Because this Amazon is responsible for releasing around 20% of oxygen. So it releases 20% of oxygen, which is used by humanity. And the same Amazon, it absorbs around 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide. It absorbs 20 to 25 percentage of carbon dioxide. And hence it is also referred as the carbon sink. Hence, as it absorbs that, Amazon is referred as carbon sink. Carbon sink. It absorbs 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide. We refer that as carbon sink, lungs of planet, and it is also very important in this perspectives. Right now, this is the data, lungs of planet, and where it is reached. Now, next perspectives. This Amazon forest is always associated with major issues. The two major issues which are associated with that is, one is forest fire. And if you are reading current affairs regularly, last month, the deadliest forest fire was there in Amazon. In the month of February, a huge amount of forest fire was burnt. Right. Second one is deforestation. Deforestation. So these are the two major issues which are seen in the Amazon part. Now, what is the reason for forest fires there? So the reason for forest fires here, most of the forest fires in the Amazon are man-made. Man-made. The reason for that is the shifting cultivation. Shifting cultivation. Shifting cultivation. And they do the shifting cultivation and they grow the crops called as soybean. Brazil is very important for soybean. So, soybean. This is with reference to Brazil I am talking. Because Brazil is the country which has 60% of Amazon forest. So majority of the forest fires in the Amazon are seen with Brazil as a major contributor. Shifting cultivation, where the soybean are grown. Second one is Brazil is also one of the important country where beef exports is done. Cattle beef export is done. So hence they clear the forest for pastures. They clear the forest for pastures, and this pasture is for their cattles. And because of these two activities, Amazon is always associated with forest fires. And if you take the recent data, of 2023 and 24, they have said that with the continuous type of the forest fires which are there in the Amazon forest fires, there is possibility that by 2050, this Amazon forest can reach to the tipping point. This Amazon forest can reach to the tipping point. Where it becomes very difficult for the Amazon forest to be restored. And then this Amazon forest, which is referred as a carbon sink, may become a major carbon emitter. This is what you should remember in the context of Amazon forest fire. And that is where in the year 2023, we come across a type of a plan which has been done to protect that. We refer them as Belem Declaration. Now, this Belem declaration was done by a group of 8 countries. It is done by 8 countries, and the idea was to restore 80% of Amazon forest. Restore 80% of Amazon forest by 2025. Restore the 80% of Amazon forest by 2025, so that to avoid it to reach to the tipping point. Avoid it to reach to the tipping point. So remember, the current affairs is Belem Declaration. So please read about this Belem Declaration. Now, clue for that is Belem Declaration is also associated with an organization which has been done in that. Again, you will get that in the current affairs. We refer that as ACTO. Have you heard about this? ACTO. ACTO, which is in the current affairs. You should be very careful with the current affairs. ACTO is something which talks about Amazon Cooperation Trade. Amazon Cooperation Trade Organization. Amazon Cooperation Trade Organization. So please remember this. Right. So this is how the current affairs questions can be asked in the context of your UPSC. So this is something about the Amazon forest, where there is a threat that it can reach to the tipping point. And this has been released in the data of 2024, a week yesterday. So they have telling that Amazon is under threat, where it can reach to a tipping point where reversible is not possible. This is some rough idea about the Amazon forest. Along with that, in the current affairs, we also come across a wetland called as Pantanal wetland. So this Pantanal wetland is the largest tropical wetland. Largest tropical wetland. And this Pantanal wetland, another 2 minutes, then we can have a break. This Pantanal wetland is spread in 3 countries. It is spread in 3 countries. That is Bolivia, Paraguay, and Brazil. 3 countries: Bolivia, Paraguay, and Brazil. Now, this Pantanal wetland, which is the largest wetland of the world, and it is also World's Heritage Site, UNESCO's Heritage Site. Largest tropical wetland. It is also World's Heritage Site. So, because of the global warming and climate change, so this region experienced drought and large amount of heat waves. So because of drought and heat waves, the vegetation becomes dry. And due to that, the forest fires reach to the wetlands as well. So this Pantanal wetland was also covered by forest fires. So 20 to 30% of the Pantanal wetland is destroyed by the forest fires. Destroyed by the forest fire because of drought and heat waves. And you should remember that this Pantanal wetland is important area because it is having the highest density of jaguars in the world. This Pantanal wetland has highest density of jaguars in the world. Highest in the world. And this region is also associated with giant anteater. Giant anteater. So this is where you have to be very, very careful in the path. So Pantanal wetland is spread in these 3 countries: Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay. Now, out of these 3 countries, which 2 countries are referred as landlocked countries? Out of these 3 countries, Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay, which 2 countries or which countries are referred as landlocked? Which countries are referred as landlocked? Right. So you should remember that Bolivia and Paraguay. And you should be very careful that these are the only two countries which are landlocked countries of South America. So all the South American countries have coastal access, but these are the only two landlocked countries of South America, and these are the only two landlocked countries which are the part of the Panthanal wetland. This is how the questions will be asked in your UPSC examination. So these are the only two landlocked countries of entire North America, that is Bolivia and Paraguay, and they are the one which has the Panthanal wetland which is seen here. So this is how you have to do the map work. Map work you have to do, and this is something about leopard. Now many students make a confusion between leopard, cheetah and jaguars, right? So this is jaguar, this is jaguar, and this is cheetah, and this is leopard. Don't get confused with these: leopard, cheetah and jaguar. Again in the context of cheetah, again in the context of cheetahs, we have African cheetahs and Asiatic cheetahs. African cheetah and Asiatic cheetahs. So this is how the questions can be seen in the context of your examination. Now we can have a break, then we can start the class at 7:10 p.m. Okay, welcome back to the session. Hope I'm audible as well as visible to you all, right? So this is something about the Amazon forest. Please confirm I'm audible as well as visible to you all. Okay. Now the next one is the Indonesian Sumatran forest. So this is Indonesia and Sumatra forest. Sumatra forest. So this region. And this Indonesia Sumatra region is also having a major issues. The major issue here is cultivation of palm oil. So palm oil cultivation is dominant here. And this is also done by shifting cultivation. Shifting cultivation. And then large amount of forest is converted into agriculture patches. Large forest areas. Large area of forest is converted into agricultural land. So because of these two activities, so this region also has large amount of forest fire issues and deforestation activities. And this has created threat to the many endemic species, which has created threat to the many endemic species in the Indonesia Sumatra region. And the dominant species which are found in the Indonesia and Sumatra are, here we find the world's largest flower called as Rafflesia arnoldi. It is the world's largest flower. And here we find Komodo dragon. And this Komodo dragon is referred as the species, and in the last IUCN red list, it is referred as in which category? Can anybody tell me? Komodo dragon was classified in which category in the last IUCN red list? Apart from that, here we find Sumatran elephant. And the Sumatran elephant is critically endangered under IUCN. Right. Sumatran elephant is critically endangered. But what about Komodo dragon? What about Komodo dragon? Komodo dragon under IUCN category. When you see IUCN category of Komodo dragon, Sumatra elephant is referred as critically endangered. What about Komodo dragon? I'm not talking about Rafflesia arnoldi. I'm talking about Komodo dragon. So Komodo dragon is referred as endangered species, threatened species. This endangered species. It is referred as endangered species under IUCN. So this is Sumatran elephant, and this is Komodo dragon. Now, when you are reading your current affairs, you should keep remembering that this is African elephant, which is largest among all, and this is Asiatic elephant. And when you take Asiatic elephant, we have Indian elephant, we have pygmy elephant, then Sri Lankan elephant, and this is Sumatra elephant. Right? So please remember these. Sometimes when you talk about elephants, remember these. We have African elephants, which are largest. IUCN is International Union for Conservation of Nature. I'll be taking that later. Which classifies the species into different groups. IUCN is International Union for Conservation of Nature. Right. Now, apart from these species, this Indonesia and Sumatra region is also known for orangutans. It is known for orangutans. And here we find two types of orangutans are there, Sumatran orangutan and Bornean orangutan. And both are referred as critically endangered species under IUCN. And this was the forest cover in 1950. And because of shifting cultivation, deforestation, It has reduced to small patches now. It has reduced into smaller patches, and which has created threat to both the types of orangutans, Sumatran orangutans as well as the Bornean orangutans. Both are classified as critically endangered. Critically endangered. This is again very important for your current affairs. Important for your current affairs. Is that clear? Orangutans. Because of forest fires, shifting cultivation, and deforestation activities. Now, next we move on to deciduous forests. So, deciduous means, the definition of deciduous means shedding the part of a tree which is not required. Shedding a part of a tree. Shedding the part of a tree. We refer that as deciduous. Right, deciduous forest. So here when we talk about shedding the part of a tree, it is shedding the leaf. Shedding the leaf. And this shedding the leaf is a mode of adaptation. It is mode of adaptation. Right. So whenever when we talk about deciduous trees, we can classify the deciduous trees or deciduous forest into two types: tropical deciduous and temperate deciduous. Tropical and temperate deciduous. Right. Now, what is the difference between tropical and temperate deciduous? Temperate deciduous, they shed their leaves during or to protect themselves from winter season. They shed their leaves to protect themselves from winter. Harsh winters, to protect themselves from harsh winters. So they shed their leaves in the winter season or before the winter season. Whereas the tropical deciduous, they shed their leaves during summer. And this is as an adaptation to conserve the water. This is an adaptation to conserve the water. Because during the summer season, there will be scarcity of water. So there will be scarcity of water. Right. And if the plant shed their leaves, then the moisture will not be lost through the stomata. So hence tropical deciduous forests, they shed their leaves during the summer season as a mode of adaptation for the scarcity of water. But in the temperate deciduous forest, they shed their leaves during the cold conditions, winter conditions. So remember this. So it is an adaptation to harsh winter. So temperate during winter and tropical during summer season. Is that clear? Two types of trees are there: tropical and temperate. Now, what is temperate deciduous and what is tropical deciduous? Now, the moment when you move on to them, certain points which are important in the context of them. Now, if you see the temperate deciduous trees, now temperate deciduous forests are found in between 40 to 60 degree latitudes. They are found between 40 to 60 degree latitudes. Now, where do you find them? We find them in the eastern part of USA or eastern part of America, in Europe, eastern part of Asia, that is China, Japan, etc. And western part of South America. And also in Australia and New Zealand. So this is the distribution of temperate deciduous forest. Now these temperate deciduous forests, where the temperature is -30 to +30 degrees due to shifting of the sun apparent shifting of the sun. And they always have hot summers and cold winters. Now, to protect themselves from the cold winters, they shed their leaves. They shed their leaves before the winter. Before winter, they shed their leaves. And this shedding of the leaves has a special season for them. We refer them as fall season. Fall season. So hence, in the temperate forest, we usually find four type of seasons are there: winter season, spring season, summer season, and fall season, where they shed their leaves. Shed their leaves. And before shedding the leaves changes their color. Before shedding the leaves changes their color. It is due to shortage of the chlorophyll. As the temperature is less here, so due to shortage of chlorophyll, the leaves changes their color. Before falling, they change their color. And these leaves are broad leaves. These are broad leaves. Please keep this in the mind. And the trees are referred as hardwood trees. The trees are referred as hardwood trees. Hardwood trees. Right, they change their color. And they are found in between 40 to 60 degree latitudes in the north as well as south. And their locations are eastern side as well as western sides. And these are their characteristics. Right. So autumn and fall season is different here. You don't find autumn and fall. So instead of that, it is unique in this area. Unique in this area, where we refine them as the fall season. Is it clear? So it is only confined to the temperate deciduous. Right. Remember the characteristics. Then tropical deciduous forests. So these are the areas which are found between marginal equatorial and tropical rainforest. Here the rainfall is 70 to 200 centimeters and heavy rainfall followed by dry season. So that's why as there is a dry season, so there is always shortage of water. Shortage of water will be there. That is, scarcity of water will be there. And to protect themselves, to conserve the water, they shed their leaves in the summer part, in the summer season, for 6 to 8 weeks. We refer that as tropical deciduous forests. And they have local names. In Brazil, they are referred as Caatinga. In Paraguay and North Argentina, they are referred as Chaco. And in Australia, they are referred as Brigalow curb. And in South Africa, they are referred as Dawnwild. So these are the local names which can be asked in prelims. Which can be asked in the prelims. Right. Now, in the context of India, where do you talk about their location? So in the context of India, these deciduous forests are also referred as monsoon forest. The deciduous forests in India, they are also referred as monsoon forests. And they cover the largest area. Largest area in India. And in India, we classify all the deciduous into two categories: moist deciduous and dry deciduous. Dry deciduous are found in the areas where the rainfall is 75 to 100 centimeters. Dry deciduous. And they are found in the peninsular plateaus and plains of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Peninsular plateaus, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, this region. Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So where we find them in that areas. Then moist deciduous areas. Moist deciduous areas are the one which are found in the northeastern states, along with the foothills of Himalayas, plus the eastern part of Western Ghat. So please remember this. Eastern part of Western Ghats. Right. And a part of Chhattisgarh in that region. Right. And remember that these regions are dominant for bamboo, mulberry, sandalwoods. So sometimes when they ask in the prelims, you should remember these data, facts. So latitudes are the imaginary lines which are drawn east to the west. Longitudes are the imaginary lines which are drawn north to the south. So these are called as latitudes. And when we talk about temperate deciduous forests are found in between 40 to 60 degree latitudes. Is that clear? So latitude of tropical deciduous, you don't have to confuse. So tropical deciduous are found in the equatorial as well as tropical rainforest. So latitude confinement is not there. So wherever we find the margins are there, we refer them as the tropical. So generally we can find them in the areas between 30 degree north and 30 degrees south. Tropical areas. Right. Okay. Now, this is about Indian perspective. Now, next we move on to coniferous forest. Coniferous, don't get much confused. So keep the data as much as possible. So coniferous forest, they are always found in between 50 to 60 degree latitudes only in the northern hemisphere. So coniferous forests are found only in the northern hemisphere. They are not in the south, only in the northern hemisphere. That is 50 to 60 degree latitudes. They are not found in the south. And here the rainfall varies from 30 to 90 centimeters. And the temperature also varies minus 40 to 20 because of apparent shifting of the sun. Right. And here the soil is slightly acidic and less nutrients are there. The soil is slightly acidic and less nutrient in that. Now, certain terms which you should remember. This coniferous forest, in the Russian language, it is referred as taiga. In the Russian language, it is referred as taiga. Right. And the same type of coniferous forest, where the density of trees are more, more specifically in Canada, This coniferous forest is also referred as boreal forest. It is also referred as boreal forest. So remember the three names of that. Three names are there: coniferous, taiga, and boreal forest, where the density is comparatively higher. Now, what type of adaptation is done here? As they are having rainfall in the form of ice, the precipitation which is in the form of ice or snow, and the temperature is also very low. So cold temperatures are there during the winter season. So harsh climatic conditions are there. And hence the trees have made adaptation. So what type of adaptations are there? Right. So when we talk about the adaptation here, so the adaptations are: the leaves are replaced by needles. The leaves are replaced by needles. Right. And flowers are replaced by cones. You don't have flowers here. Instead of flowers, we find cones are there. replaced by the cones. And here the vegetation, they are spruce, fir, pine. And the animal species are reindeers, caribou, etc. Animal species are reindeer and caribou, etc. Is that clear? And in this forest biome, we find they have the largest trees or biggest trees in the world. And they have the tallest trees in the world. Example, redwood. And the biggest tree is giant sequoia. So they have the largest trees and they have the tallest trees in the world. And these trees, these forests, they are used for newsprint, pulp. These trees are used for making newsprint, pulp, and matchbox. They are used for these. So it means they are having very important economic activities. Newsprint means low quality paper which are used for printing the news. Low quality paper for advertisement and newspaper. We refer them as newsprints. So this is about the coniferous vegetation, right? So remember their adaptation, right? Now, next we moved on to Mediterranean scrubland. Now, this Mediterranean scrubland is very unique. It is not found in all the part of the earth. It is found in very specific area. It is found in between 30-degree latitudes to 40-degree latitude. 30-degree and 40-degree latitude in the western margins of the continent. In the western margins of continent. Western margins of the continents, right? Now here we find them in California, in the European part, in Chile, this region. So 30 to 40-degree in the western margins. In California, it is called as chaparral. In France, it is called as maquis. In Africa, it is referred as fynbos. And in Chile, it is referred as metrol. And in Australia, it is referred as mallee. So these are the local names which are given to the Mediterranean scrubland. Mediterranean scrubland, which is found in between 30 to 40-degree latitudes in the western margins of the continent. And remember, this area is very unique because it receives the rainfall during winter season. It receives the precipitation or rainfall during winter season. Now, why they receive the rainfall during? Now, height of the trees is not required. You don't have to measure. Just remember tallest trees. They will not ask any question. So sometimes they exceed 100 meters also, 80 meters, 90 meters. You don't have to remember the height. Just remember they have the highest trees in the world, right? Now, why the Mediterranean climate receives the rainfall during the winter season? Why they receive the rainfall during winter season? This is your pure geography part. Why they receive rainfall only during the winter season, right? So this is associated with something called as shifting of pressure belts, not the fronts, due to shifting of pressure belt. Shifting of the pressure belts. So please remember these things, shifting of pressure belts. So during the winter season, so these areas are affected by, or the westerlies which were there in that region brings the rainfall, and these westerlies, they are in the form of onshore winds. So in the winter season, they are under the onshore westerlies. Not western disturbances, don't confuse with the western disturbances. So here it is the shifting of the wind patterns. due to shifting of the pressure belts. All the time they are under the trade winds, and trade winds are offshore to them during the winter season. When the pressure belt shifts, then that region comes under the westerlies, and westerlies are onshore in the western side of the continent, and hence they bring rainfall during the winter season. This is your geography part. Is that clear? So never make a mistake on defining western disturbances. Western disturbances are found in Indian part, right? So in India we refer them as western disturbances. Is it clear? So this is about the Mediterranean scrubland. And here, this region is known for citrus cultivation. This region is known for citrus cultivation. That is orange, grapes, lemons, etc. This region is known for orange, grapes, lemons, etc. So hence, they are not the normal rice or wheat crops. They are plantation crops. So hence, this Mediterranean scrubland is referred as the orchard part of the words, or orchard land of the world. It is called as the orchard land of the world, because of plantation. Orchard means plantation. Orchard means plantation. So please remember these things. And here, if you see the trees, the trees are stunted. They are not very big trees, short trees. Short trees, and hence they are referred as scrubland. Short trees are there, so hence they are referred as scrublands. Is it clear? And as they receive the rainfall during the winter season, so these short trees, they have the leaves which are fleshy, so that they can protect themselves during the rainy season, during the winter season. So they have fleshy leaves to protect themselves, and the trees are shorter one. We refer them as scrubland. So this is some rough idea about Mediterranean climate. And if you see the vegetation, so this is called as the stunted tree or stunted vegetation, and we refer that as sclerophyllus. Sclerophyllus. Sclerophyllus, right? Short trees and fleshy leaves. Short trees plus fleshy leaves. And along with that, the geographical area surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. Within this Mediterranean climate, the geographical area surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, is referred as Mediterranean region. Is referred as Mediterranean region. The area which is surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, we refer that as Mediterranean region. And this Mediterranean region is known for growing of the grapes. Growing of the grapes. Best quality of grapes are there. Processing of the grapes is done here. And this is known as viticulture. Is known as viticulture. So Mediterranean region is known for viticulture. Surrounding Mediterranean Sea. Surrounding Mediterranean Sea. So these are the countries which surrounds the Mediterranean Sea. Spain, Monaco, Italy, Albania. So please read this in your geography when you're reading map work. So this is about what we refer them as the Mediterranean climate. Mediterranean scrublands. And it is found in between 30 to 40 degree latitudes in the western margins of the continents. Is that clear? Now next we move on to grasslands. Now, the moment when you move on to the grasslands, it is found in all the continent except Antarctica. It is found in all continents except Antarctica. Except Antarctica. And this grassland is the most modified biome. It is most modified biome. It is most modified biome by human activities. By human activities or by human. And this grasslands, they are fertile soils. And hence they are suitable for crops and pastures. Hence they are suitable for crops and pastures. The unique thing about the grassland is the periodic forest fire. Periodic and controlled forest fire. Periodic and controlled forest fire is important component of grassland. Important component of grasslands. Is that clear? So it is found in all the continent except Antarctica. And it is having fertile soils which is suitable for the crops and the pastures. And here it is periodic and controlled forest fire, which is important component of the grasslands. Now all the grasslands are classified into two major types. So what are the two major types of the grasslands? If you take this as an earth. Now the area between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So this is called as Tropic of Cancer and this is called as Tropic of Capricorn. And this grassland, which is between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, we refer that as tropical grassland. Tropical grassland. It is also called as savanna. Tropical grassland or savanna. And the second type is beyond the Tropic of Cancer and beyond the Tropic of Capricorn. And we refer that as temperate grassland. So this region, we refer that as temperate grasslands. So we can classify the entire grasslands into two major categories: tropical grassland and temperate grasslands. Is it clear? Two varieties, tropical as well as temperate. Right. Now India also has grasslands. Now where do you find the grasslands? Any important grassland of India? Any important grassland of India? Any one name which is in the current affairs? India has also grasslands. Any name which is in the current affairs? In India, the grasslands are referred as the bunny grasslands. Bunny grasslands. And where do you find the bunny grasslands? In Gujarat. Right. So this is how you have to link your current affairs as well. Is it clear? So grasslands. Now we'll take up what is tropical grassland and what is temperate grassland. Yes, that is largest in Asia. And they are all in the current affairs. Right. Now, the tropical grasslands is also called as savanna. And this receives rainfall which is 76 to 100 centimeters. And here we find the temperature is 21 to 26 degrees centigrade. Right. Then soil is thin and porous. So that's why it is fertile. Yes, Banni Mara or Banni grassland, both are same. It is grassland. It is Asia's largest grassland. Right now, this is in the news. And which community is there in the Banni grassland? We have a tribal community called as Maldharis. Maldhari communities are there in the Banni grassland. So when I take the biodiversity with reference to India, maybe tomorrow we'll discuss more on that. We'll discuss more on that. All are in current affairs. Maldhari communities, Banni grasslands of Gujarat. Right. So we'll discuss that. So it is very fertile. Now here the local names given to that. Local names given to that are, in Brazil it is referred as Campos, and in Venezuela it is referred as Llanos. And in Africa we have the largest grassland, and we refer that as Sahel grassland. Sahel grassland of Africa. Right. Now, when we talk about the Sahel grassland of Africa, which is the biome, or which is the land which is in the north of Sahel in Africa. So this area, which land is there in the north of Sahel region? That is Sahara Desert, the largest desert of the world. Sahara Desert of the world. And Sahel region separates the Sahara Desert from the fertile area of the south. Right, Sahel is in between the Sahara Desert and the fertile South African region. Sahel region, please remember that. Now, this tropical grassland, they have the tallest mammals on the earth, like giraffe. And these tropical grassland, they have the heaviest or the largest terrestrial mammal. So they have the largest terrestrial mammal. Right. Now, which is the largest mammal on the earth? Which is the largest mammal on the earth? Largest mammal on the earth. Perfect. It is blue whale. Largest mammal on the earth is blue whale, and the largest terrestrial mammal is African elephant with huge tusks. Largest is elephant. Elephant. Right. So this is something you should remember. Right. Now, apart from all these activities, the Sahara is also very important, because the winds which move from Sahara, the winds which move from Sahara, they provide large amount of nutrients to the largest tropical evergreen forest in the world. Which is that largest evergreen forest? Which is that largest evergreen forest? So the Sahara forest, when the winds flow here, these winds supply the nutrients to the largest tropical rainforest in the world. So as I told that Amazon forest is having less fertile soils because of heavy rainfall. So due to heavy rainfall, all the nutrients are washed out. But the nutrients are supplied to the Amazon forest from the Sahara Desert. So it will supply the nutrients to the Amazon forest. It supplies large amount of nutrients through the winds to the Amazon forest. So that's why luxury vegetation is there in the Amazon forest in spite of heavy rainfall and poor nutrition, because the nutrition is supplied by the Sahara Desert. The phosphorus, the nutrients which are required for the growth of the plants, is supplied by the Sahara Desert there. Is it clear? No, Savannah do not have Maldari communities. Savannah do not have Maldari communities. Bunny grassland. So I'll take it tomorrow. I'll take it tomorrow. So don't get confused. Don't get confused. Right. So Savannah do not have any type of. Savannah is a name given. Only the Bunny grassland have Maldari communities. We'll discuss that later. So please remember these names. Is it clear? Now, what type of vegetation we find in the tropical grassland? In the tropical grassland, we always find the vegetation where it is having grass like plus big trees. Big tree. So such combinations are there. So it is a combination of grass and big tree, just like a lawn in the park. So hence it is referred as park-like vegetation. Savanna vegetation is park-like vegetation. So you should be very careful in understanding that. If it is having this combination, if it is having both tree as well as grasses, then only we refer that as tropical grassland. It is mandatory that it should have a grass plus tree. So it is a combination of tree as well as the grass. Then only we refer that as the tropical grassland or savanna. Both are there. Both should be there. Grass as well as the tree. And here the rainfall is very less. To preserve the water, the trees are flat top and umbrella shape. The trees are flat top or umbrella shape. Umbrella shape. The trees are flat top and umbrella shaped. Right. So when you talk about the vegetation, so always remember that they have particular characteristics and they have adapted to the particular conditions there. Heavy rainfall, less rainfall. So in the tropical areas where the grasslands are there, rainfall is very less. So hence they have adapted to that condition by having the flat top and umbrella shape. And it is always park-like vegetation. Now, there is a characteristics which is involved in making the park-like vegetation. Now, one particular animal is involved in that. One particular animal is involved in that. And if you remove that animal, this park-like vegetation will not be there. The park-like vegetation is because of presence of one animal. Presence of animal called as elephant. Elephant. If you remove the elephant, then it will not be a park-like vegetation. Now, what does this elephant does here? Now, this elephant, it uproots the trees. This elephant, it uproots. It removes the small trees. The small trees, acacia trees, etc. So when it removes the trees there, so that area will be free to grow the grass. It will make the area free to grow grass. So because of the presence of elephant, it is having a combination of tree plus the grasses. So hence it is called as park-like vegetation. Hence it is called as park-like vegetation. Right. And if you remove the elephant, then it will destroy the balance of that tropical savanna. And hence this elephant plays an important role in maintaining park-like vegetation. And such species are referred as keystone species. Such species are referred as keystone species. Right. And example of keystone species is the elephant in the tropical grassland. Elephant in tropical grassland or savanna. Right. So we refer that as keystone species. Now, what are keystone species? Keystone species are the species which may be smaller in the number. Keystone species are the species which may be smaller in the number. And they can be herbivore or they can be carnivore or they can be omnivore. They can be herbivore or they can be carnivore. Their presence is important to maintain the ecosystem. Their presence is important to maintain ecosystem. maintain ecosystem. If you remove the keystone species, the whole ecosystem will collapse. If you remove the keystone species, the ecosystem will collapse. So if you remove the African elephant there, then the entire area will be covered by the trees. Then we will not call that as a grassland. It may take a different name, whether it will become a forest area or something like that. So it is the grassland due to the presence of African elephant, which uproots that and makes the park-like vegetation. So such type of species, we refer them as keystone species. So can you give any example of keystone species apart from elephant? Any other example of keystone species apart from elephant? Apart from elephant. Any other species? Any other species? Right, we can get them. Honeybees are there. Any big one, any apart from that, right? So don't get cactus in desert. Cactus cannot be referred as the keystone species. You give the general examples. We find them like leopards are there, cheetahs are there, which are referred as sea otters in the kelp forest, sea otters in the kelp forests, right? Kangaroos. So these all are referred as what we call them as the keystone species. So keystone species, even though they are less in the number, if you remove them, then the whole ecosystem will collapse. Perfect. So that is keystone species, right? Perfect. Now next is temperate grassland. So temperate grasslands are found above the tropics, that is in the northern side and southern hemisphere, that is beyond tropics areas, beyond tropics. And here they are having local names like prairies, pampas. Prairies in the North America, pampas in the south, steppes in the Eurasia, and then veld in the Africa. So they have local names. Local names. Sometimes they may ask them in the prelims. Right. Now when we take about the prairies, prairies are very important. Prairies are referred as the wheat baskets of the world or bread basket of the world. Wheat basket or bread basket of the world, because it is a region where we find large amount of grasses have been modified, and instead of that, wheat cultivation is done here. The grasses have been removed, and instead of that, wheat cultivation is done here. So hence prairies are referred as wheat baskets or bread basket of the world, right? Now next is deserts. So desert is an area where we find it is having low precipitation, low rainfall, and apart from that, low productivity. Low productivity. And these deserts can be classified into two major types, that is hot deserts and cold deserts. Hot desert and cold deserts, right? Example of cold desert is the Gobi Desert or Ladakh. Gobi Desert or Ladakh, right? Where I have mentioned. So savanna is referred as tropical. Don't get confused with this. Don't get confused with this. So these are referred as temperate grasslands. Right. Now the examples of hot deserts. Example of hot deserts are Sahara, Thar Desert of India, etc. Thar deserts of India. So we find them into two major categories, hot deserts as well as cold deserts. Now when we talk about hot deserts, in the hot deserts like Sahara and Thar, large of the area is open space. large area is exposed to sunlight, right? So limited vegetations will be there. Limited vegetation. And here the vegetations are like cactus. We refer them as xerophytes. Xerophytes, right? Now, generally, when we talk about xerophytes, they have fleshy stems and they have thorns or needles in their leaves. Thorns or needle. So that the animals should not eat them. Animals should not eat them. And when you take a look of cold deserts, Gobi and Ladakh, so in these areas, we find very fragile vegetations are there. Sensitive vegetation. Fragile means sensitive vegetations like lichens, mosses will be there. Lichens, mosses, etc. in the cold deserts. So hot deserts and cold deserts where the productivity is very, very less. Now, if we take this, which is the largest desert in the world? Largest desert in the world, right? So the largest desert in the world is Antarctica. Largest desert in the world is Antarctica. Then Sahara Desert, right? So don't get confused. Don't get confused. Antarctica is cold desert in the southern hemisphere. Is it clear? Now, apart from this, when we talk about the deserts, these deserts are classified on the basis of their surfaces. If the desert is dominant by sand, we refer that as erg desert. Erg desert. If it is dominated by the stones, if it is dominated by the stones, we refer that as regs. And if it is dominated by rocky surfaces, if it is dominated by rocks or rocky surfaces, then we refer them as hamadas. Hamadas. So ergs, regs, and hamadas. Regs, ergs, and hamadas. So here, deserts, hot desert and cold deserts. Hot deserts have xerophytes vegetation. Cold deserts have fragile vegetations like lichens and mosses. Lichens and mosses. And large area is bare. Open areas are there. Right. Now, the desert which is associated with India is the Thar Desert. Associated with India is the Thar Desert. In the Thar deserts, we find the adaptations are done. Generally, when you talk about the camel, so the adaptation is done by the camel, where it is having a leathery mouth, which can eat the spike plants without having any pain. They have long legs, and they have padded feet, which will not sink, and they have the humps, which protects them, and they have long eyelashes, which makes not the sand to enter into them, and they have stretchy nostrils which make the sand to keep out. So these are adaptations which have been done by the camel for its survival. Now this desert area is also known for one of the important species which is critically endangered species in the IUCN list, that is called as Great Indian Bustard. Great Indian Bustard, GIB. And this Great Indian Bustard is critically endangered species in IUCN Red List. IUCN Red List. And the data which was given in the year 2023, and the major concern even in the year 2024. that these great Indian busters, they are having the threat from high tension electrical wires. Electrocation will be there, and solar parks, and high wind farms, which poses threat for these species of critically endangered in the Desert National Park of Rajasthan. Desert National Park in the Jaisalmer areas. So government has said that try to find a solution to this condition. Still now they are not done anything which can protect and prevent. And in spite of the government warning, we are losing the critically endangered species. So maybe if the condition persuades, then these will convert themselves from critical extent to they may become extinct. And they are very predominantly seen in the districts of Jaisalmer. And this is an area where the cause of concern. So this is your current affairs associated with the great Indian bustard, right? So sometimes when they ask in the current affairs, you should be careful in locating this, right? Now, next one is tundra. Now, before moving down to tundra, understand one. I told you about the four spheres of the earth. I told you about the four spheres of the earth. They are lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere, which are referred as the four sphere of the earth. Now, if you take the earth, in the earth we find certain patches are there which are covered by the ice, the Arctic region, the Arctic region, Antarctic region, and high altitude areas, high altitude areas, also Greenland in these areas. So these areas where we find the ice deposits are there, which are having low temperature, which is always covered by ice, which is permafrost, permanently frozen, or permafrost. And this region is referred as the fifth sphere of the earth, and we refer that as cryosphere. We refer that as cryosphere, fifth sphere of the earth. It is critically endangered. Don't get confused, Dinesh. It is critically endangered. It is critically endangered. There is a threat of extinction. Threat of extinction. Don't get confused. Threat of extinction. Right? Don't get confused. Right? Okay. So here we define them as cryosphere. Cryosphere. Low temperature, permanently frozen areas. So all these areas are referred as the cryosphere of the earth. And cryosphere consists of Arctic region. It consists of Antarctica, and it also consists of all the ice areas. All the ice areas, we refer that as the cryosphere of the earth. But here you should remember one thing. This portion, which is called as Antarctica, even though it is the part of Earth's cryosphere, it is referred as desert. It is referred as desert. And it is also the part of cryosphere. It is the part of cryosphere, but it is referred as desert because this receives very low precipitation, and high velocity winds are there, and very low productivity. So this is called as desert. But the ice deposits which are found in the Arctic, the ice deposits of the Arctic, plus the ice deposits of higher altitude, the ice deposits of higher altitude, higher altitude. Both are the parts of cryosphere. They are also the parts of cryosphere. But instead of deserts, they are referred as tundra. They are referred as tundra. So never make a mistake of classifying the Antarctica as tundra. Antarctica is a desert, whereas Arctic and the higher altitude, we refer them as tundras. So only these are referred as tundras. And Antarctica is referred as desert. And both are the part of the Earth's cryosphere. Both are the part of the Earth's cryosphere. Is that clear? So don't get confused. Don't get confused. And Antarctica is also referred as scientific continent of the Earth. Scientific continent, where only research can be done. Only research can be done here. No type of military. So it is demilitarized zone. No military activities. And this Antarctica is protected by Antarctica Treaty. Antarctica Treaty, which has made Antarctica as no military zone. No military zone. Right. So it is protected, not like Arctic. It is protected. Is it clear? So remember something about Antarctica. Right. Then Arctic do not have any such treaty which can be protected. So this is your geographical term. So Antarctica is a desert, and here it is known for research centers. So India's research centers are also there. Two of the India's research centers are still working there. So can you name them? Which are the two research centers of India which are there in Antarctica? One has been abandoned. One has been abandoned. Don't get confused. Don't get confused. So here we have two research centers, that is Dakshin Gangotri has been abandoned. Maitri and Bharati. Maitri and Bharati. And don't confuse. Lakshmi Himadri is in Arctic. Himadri is in Arctic. Himadri is in the northern hemisphere. You should be very careful with your current affairs. So Maitri and Bharati are the two research centers which are there. Right. And apart from Antarctica Treaty, this is also have one more type, Madrid Protocol, which provides environmental protection. Madrid Protocol. Which provides environmental protection to Antarctica, where it has banned commercial mining. Under Madrid Protocol, commercial mining is banned here. Is banned in Antarctica. Right. So it is banned for 50 years, 1998 to 2048. 1998 to 2048. So Madrid Protocol is a group of countries which have made them. So please read this in your current affairs. This is your geography part, but yet in the context of current affairs. So remember, cryosphere is the fifth sphere of the Earth. And Antarctica is a part of cryosphere, but we call it as a desert. And Arctic and other regions are referred as the tundras. So tundras in the northern hemisphere. We don't find them in the southern hemisphere. Right. Now, keeping this thing in the mind, tundras, it is a term which is derived from Finnish term, called as tuntura. That is barren land. And this tundra is classified into two categories. That is the tundra which is found in the Arctic. We refer that as polar tundra. polar tundra or Arctic tundra. And the tundra which is found at higher altitudes like Himalayas, Alps mountain, we refer that as alpine tundra. Alpine tundra, which is found at height. Example, Himalayas, Alps mountain, etc. So polar tundra and alpine tundra, two varieties are there. And here it is always have permafrost. So permanently frozen. Permafrost means permanently frozen. Thick ice deposits are there. Here the precipitation is less than 25 centimeters and it covers 10% of the earth. And here we find the sunlight does not reaches occasionally. So hence less growing season. For Arctic it is 50 to 60 days. And for alpine tundra it is 180 days of growing. 180 days of growing. That is sunlight availability. Right. And this have always fragile vegetation, sensitive vegetation. More specifically, what we refer them as mosses, lichens, etc. Very fertile, sorry, very sensitive type of vegetation. And this is referred as the two types. This is polar tundra or Arctic tundra. And this is where we refer them as the alpine tundra. Alpine tundra. And Arctic tundra is always associated with many issues. So in the global warming and climate change, we'll discuss that in detail. Arctic tundra is associated with high velocities of cold winds, and we refer them as blizzards. Blizzards. And this Arctic region is also associated with Eskimos, who construct their houses made up of ice called as igloos. That is their houses which are made up of ice. And this Arctic region is referred as important carbon sink of an earth. It is referred as important carbon sink of the earth, where it is having large amount of undecomposed wood are there. Undecomposed trees, dead trees. So it is referred as major carbon sink of the world. Then when you take a look of alpine tundra, so alpine tundra is found in high mountains. And when we talk about the alpine tundras, you should remember that this alpine tundra, the soil is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. The soil is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. Soil is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, but due to less amount of sunlight, it does not have strong vegetation. It does not have strong vegetation like the ground. But it is having comparatively rich vegetation than that of Arctic areas. But the major issue associated with the alpine tundra is deforestation. Overgrazing, and it is a region where we find landslides are dominant. Landslides and soil erosions are dominant. Erosion are dominant. So that is about Arctic and Antarctic. Sorry, alpine and the Arctic tundras. Is that clear? Now, here we find certain species. So these are found in the Arctic tundra, that is polar bear, snow geese, musk, and all. So marmot and mountain goat. So these are found in alpine tundra. Alpine tundra. Apart from that, we also find certain types of animal species here, like snow leopard. Also, we find snow leopard, which is there in the Himalayas. Snow leopard in the Himalayas, right? So glacial lake outburst floods, they are associated with major problems. So when I take India, we'll discuss that in detail. Right. So gloves are also, you can add that. You can add that. So these areas are associated with gloves, glacial lake outburst floods. Glacial lake outburst floods. So that is also seen in these areas. Right. So that is about all the biomes of the world. Right. Desert biome, etc. Right. So we completed all the biomes of the world. Right. Now, when we talk about all the biomes of the world, when we talk about all the biomes of the world, please remember this in graphical way. In the graphical way. Now, when we talk about the graphical representation of all the biomes of the world, we can define them on the basis of temperature, dry to wet. Dry means high temperature or no rainfall. Wet means heavy rainfall in that region. And then warm to cold. Warm to cold. Now, when we represent them in the form of the triangular shapes, we can classify them into different types. The region where we are having the area where we are having the temperature which is very high and less rainfall. So this region is referred as hot deserts. Hot desert. And the region in the same where small amount of rainfall is there. Small amount of rainfall is there and it is still warmer. Still warmer. So this region we refer them as tropical grassland. Tropical grassland. Right. Then if you move on still more further, where we find the temperature is the same and the rainfall is bit more here. Rainfall is more here. So we refer this area as tropical deciduous forest. Tropical deciduous forest. And then the last region where the temperature is also high, rainfall is also very high. So we refer this as tropical evergreen forest. Evergreen forest. Right. Now, in the same way, when you move on to the upper part, that is where the temperature is less and the rainfall is also less. Temperature is less and the rainfall is also less. So this region, we refer this as cold deserts. Cold desert. Now, in the same way, where we find the temperature is less and the rainfall is also less here. So this is called as temperate grassland. Temperate grassland. Grassland, right? Then the areas where rainfall is more and the temperature is also less. So this is called as temperate deciduous forest. Temperate deciduous forest, right? And when you move on to still more, where the temperature is less, and rainfall is also comparatively less. So this is a region which is referred as coniferous forest. Coniferous or taiga or boreal forest. Boreal forest, right? And the last one is where the temperature is also less, rainfall is also very, very less. So we refer that this region as tundra, right? So tropical evergreen, temperate deciduous, grasslands, which are tropical grasslands, cold deserts, warm deserts. So this is how you should remember them in your examination. So the regions are warm deserts, tropical grasslands, tropical deciduous, tropical evergreen, increasing in the rainfall. Then cold deserts, temperate grasslands, then temperate deciduous, then coniferous. So Mediterranean is unique. Mediterranean you can find in between 30 to 40-degree latitudes in the western margins. In the western margins. Don't get confused. They are exclusively only in the western margins. Only in the western margins. Tundra is referred as a vegetation, and even though it is a part of cryosphere, tundra is referred as a biome, whereas the Antarctica is not referred as tundra, it is referred as a desert biome because of low rainfall and its geological location. So when we say geological location, it is a continent, and on the continent the ice deposits are there. If you see the geological aspect of Antarctica and Arctic, both differentiates from each other. Arctic is a ocean, and above the ocean ice deposits are there. Antarctica is a continent, and above the continent ice deposits are there. Geologically they are completely different from each other. Geologically they are completely different from each other. If you take Arctic, Arctic is an ocean, and above the ocean thick ice deposits are there. This is Arctic. And if you take Antarctica, Antarctica is a continent, and above the Antarctica continent we find thick ice deposits are there. Thick ice deposits are there. Is it clear? So please remember these things. Geologically they are different from each other. Geologically they are different. So Arctic is a ocean, and above the ocean thick ice deposit is there, where Antarctica is a continent, land area and covered by the ice. Is that clear? Is that clear, Ankush, when we talk about the perspectives, right? So this is what you should remember in the context of your examination. So a lot of geography, lots of facts were there, but yet they are important in the context of your studies, right? So this completes the entire biome. So the definition of biome stands is to analyze the worldwide distribution of flora and fauna. Earth is divided into biomes. So they are the larger geographical area. They are the larger geographical area with unique types of climatic conditions. Now, keep this in the mind. I don't think you will have any problem in writing any type of question which is asked in the examination, right? So please keep this in the mind. Dry, wet, warm, cold. And if you analyze that, all biomes will be in your fingertips. All biomes will be in the fingertips, keeping the calculation. Is that clear? Okay. Now, ecotone and edge effect. So tomorrow we'll start ecotone and edge effect. So again, I'm telling you, can we say all Earth as a biome? No. So Earth, when we say a part of a Earth is biosphere. So within the biosphere, biomes are there. So please refer to that chronology. I told you the hierarchy. I told you about the hierarchy, right? So in the Earth, we have biosphere. Biosphere has biomes, ecosystems, community, species, individual. So please go with that hierarchy. Is that clear? So bigger, smaller, smaller. From individual, we reach to the biosphere. Don't get confused. So read all the parts which have been discussed. Wherever current affairs are there, wherever the demands are there, so please revise them and update all the datas, update all the facts. Even if you follow from the class which we have started and linking that with your current affairs, I don't think you will have any problem in answering the questions which are asked in the UPSC. So first prepare your base, and then you can take the content in such a way. So that's why I told you, keep the PPT as a skeleton, and then you can fill them with your current affairs whenever you are reading that. So when we cover another 2 or 3 days of classes, then I'll take up mains examination, previous year questions also, and then we will discuss how to write answers for the same. How to write answers for the same. Is that clear? So don't get much stress. Read the questions as much as possible. Read the content and have your own method of making the notes here. Make the notes, prepare the notes in that case. So can we say the temperature range between the hot desert, tropical grassland? See, when we say the temperature ranges always varies. Temperature range is the difference between the highest temperature of a day and lowest temperature of the day, right? So when we take about the temperature perspectives, temperature range is totally different. Highest temperature of a day and lowest temperature of a day, we refer that as temperature range. So generally in the desert areas, because of its physical features, we don't find they are having unique. So in the desert, the temperature range is very high. The days are more warm and the nights are very less. Average temperature will be uniform. So the rather than using the temperature range, you can say average temperature. Is that clear? So we can conclude the class and we'll meet up tomorrow on the same time, right? So take care. Bye bye. uh, Weather or temperature? See, the difference is temperature is part of weather. Weather has different characteristics. So when I take climate change, I'll explain that. So weather has different units like temperature, pressure, etc. So weather includes temperature. Temperature is a part of weather, and it is for the shorter period of a time. And the same when you calculate for a longer period of a time, then we refer that as a climate. Should we favor solar plants or great Indian busters? So when we talk, we should always find alternate method to that. So solar plants are also very important. Great Indian busters are also very important. We have to find a solution which can be win-win for both. You can't leave the solar panels. So we have to find something which can be feasible. Like in the context of solar panels, we have constructed the largest floating solar panel in the world. We have constructed the largest floating solar panel in the world. Laksha, any idea where you find the largest floating solar panels in the world? In India, we are having that. Largest solar floating panel. So it is in the Omkareshwar Dam. So once it will start operating in the Narmada River, Omkareshwar Dam, not in the Gujarat, right? So we find that largest floating solar panel in the world. So we have to find alternate ways by which the solutions can be found. So that's why these alternate ways will be something which are important for your current affairs, right? So we can conclude the class. Thank you.